Well, hello everybody, it is Dan, your friendly fishmonger from dansfish.com, and today we are going to talk about breeding angelfish and hatching the eggs and getting the babies started and feeding and growing. I treat the eggs a little differently than you've probably heard of, so let's get right to it and I'll show you what I do. Alright. So this is a pair spawning. This is pair number 3. And I did not know that they were going to spawn in time, so I saw them kind of start some pre-spawning activity. I put that white pipe in there on the right-hand side of the image real quick, hoping that they would spawn on it, but they had already selected and cleaned their spawning site, so they're just going on the back of the tank, which can happen. So if you do have a spawning site in there, like a piece of PVC or a spawning cone, they'll almost always spawn on it. But if you don't, this is what they do. They make do with what they can find. So you'll see their spawning method, like in typical cichlid fashion, at least substrate spawners in cichlids, not mouth brooders. The female up top there, she'll go and lay a row of eggs, and then the male will come up behind her and swim over the eggs and expel his milt onto the eggs and fertilize them. And typically, while they're doing this, it's the male's job to kind of keep other fish away. So there's a few catfish in here, some corridoras, and every now and then you'll see the male run off to go chase away a catfish that got too close. So that's kind of his job. Once the spawning is done, the female's job is to guard the eggs. She'll stay very close to the eggs while the male kind of patrols the territory and makes sure that no fish come too close. So he protects the territory, she protects and cares for the eggs, and that's kind of how they divide up the partnership. So she just laid a row of eggs there, and then the male will come by and go up and fertilize those. So that's how they do it. And here is another pair. This is a different tank. These guys did spawn on the PVC pipe, thank goodness. And the pipe is white, so it's reflecting the light so brightly that the camera's having trouble picking up the eggs on the pipe. But if you look closely, you will see that as they go up to lay the eggs or the male to fertilize the eggs, when it gets in their shadow, you'll see just tons of eggs down there that they're laying. So you can see them now, all those eggs right there. So they're doing a good job. This is a pretty massive spawn. This is pair number 1 for those that are wondering. And so every time that I spawn them, I usually put in just a piece of PVC pipe. I think it's 1 1/4 inch PVC. You can use whatever thickness you have. And it's cut long enough to kind of just lean in the corner of the tank at a little bit of an angle. And I do that because I almost always artificially incubate the eggs. Angelfish are so used to being bred in captivity for so long that a lot of them have lost kind of their drive to care for their fry. So I artificially incubate them. I take the pipe out and I put it in a container like this. So there are 2 spawns in here from 2 separate pairs. This one on the back here is a little hard to see because the pipe's angled kind of facing the other way. We'll take a kind of. But anyway, this is a 2-gallon container. It is just a recycled animal cracker container from Costco. I love buying animal crackers because then I can use these awesome jars. And there's an air stone in there to help circulate the water, and then an egg tumbler in there that doesn't have eggs in it, oddly enough, but it helps circulate the water without making it too turbulent. That's why I have that in there. You can use a piece of pipe, you can use kind of as a stand tube to have air go through and not make things too turbulent. You can do lots of things, but bottom line is you need some airflow in there so you just have the water circulating a little bit, not too much. Now this is a couple days later. We've got wrigglers, so those little dark spheres with little tails sticking off them wriggling around. That's kind of the first stage of them developing. And by the way, when those eggs are in there, the thing I do different than most people do is I use hydrogen peroxide in the water. Most people use methylene blue, and it turns the water this dark kind of blue color. I just use hydrogen peroxide, normal old 3% that you can find at any store pretty much, any grocery store, pharmacy. And I put in 3 milliliters per gallon is about what I'm doing on these guys. So I do that while they're eggs. As soon as they become wrigglers, I stop that because I don't want to damage them once they hatch. But when they're in the eggs, that's fine to use. So as you can see, all the eggs that were kind of dark colored in the previous clip have now become wrigglers. All the ones that were really light colored haven't hatched because they were not fertile. And I don't think that's because the male has fertility issues. I think it's because this is only their second spawn ever, and he's not really hip to the jive on how to fertilize them effectively. I'll often notice that the female lays a string of eggs, and he comes up and, fertilizes a completely different stream of eggs. So I think the fertility issue is on his knowledge of how to fertilize the eggs, which hopefully he'll get better with time. So this is another day or two later, and as you can see, the wrigglers have developed even more. Their yolk sac is being absorbed, their eyes are further developed, and their tails are longer and stronger, and the body's kind of starting to take definition. So this is the other stage, as they progress through their wriggler stages. Now, these guys, they attach to the pipe in this case, or to whatever they're attached to, by a little string on their head, a little sticky filament. These guys up here on this other pipe are a couple days younger. Actually, I think 1 day younger. And you can kind of see the difference. Hang on, let's focus here. We'll get it, I think. Okay, here, there we go. You can see the difference. They're still developing, but they just aren't quite as developed as the older batch. But that's what they look like maybe 2 days after hatching. These guys down here are probably about 3 days. And the temperature is mid-70s, high 70s. So if I kept them warmer, they would develop faster. Now this is a day or two after that last clip, and they are now free swimming and able to take food. So I've kind of just put them into this 5.5 gallon aquarium, which is what I like to use for raising batches of fry. It has a Hamburg Matten filter in the back and just a little air-driven Matten filter, and that works really nicely. It keeps the water from moving too much, but does a good job at keeping waste down. As you can see, there's a lot of waste in here, and part of that is all these snails. I tend to feed the fry pretty heavily, so they create a lot of waste, and then I put snails in there to help clean up the waste. At this stage, they're eating baby brine shrimp, and they're eating microworms. So let's take a look at what they look like when they've just fed. Here they are. I just fed them a bunch of baby brine shrimp, and as you can see, their little bellies are just massively packed with it. It's a great food for them. It puts good size and growth on them, and you can tell they're eating it because it turns their bellies orange, which is super nice. It's nice to be able to see that it's actually working. So that's one reason I like feeding this food. But they'll go for it right away, and kind of as soon as they're free swimming and learn to eat, then it's really a matter of just keeping enough food in front of them and changing enough water that they have a lot of food for growth, but that they get clean water so that they don't die from water pollution. So it's this balancing act between, hey, here's tons of food, and how do we keep the water clean while we're feeding that much food? That's the trick to it. And yeah, they're pretty easy though once you get them into the free swimming stage. So here's a group of them eating, these are microworms that I've put in there. So they eat these as well, and they like them just fine. I like to rotate though and give them a little variety. So sometimes it's brine shrimp, sometimes it's microworms, sometimes it's vinegar eels. But I like to just rotate through so that, there's different nutrition profiles to each food that you feed. And so I feel that by giving a variety, I'm more likely to get them all the nutrition they need. I also, at this stage, start putting in very small pieces of Repashy gel food, just so that I can get them used to eating it, because once they learn to eat that makes it very easy to keep food in front of them all the time and to raise them up more quickly. So there's some Repashy there in the left-hand corner. the snails are going for it. But the fish will learn to eat it within, you know, a week or two. These little guys will be chowing down on that, and then suddenly my job gets a lot easier, or a lot less risky, I guess, to raise them up. Alright, so that's how I take care of angelfish: spawning eggs, raising the babies, getting them going, all that. And once they start eating like that in those little containers, in those little aquariums, then it's just a matter of time. They grow pretty quickly if you feed them a lot and you change the water frequently. So anyway, if you have a question about this video, please leave a comment down below. There's a finger on screen and everything. And we can get a geek out discussion going on angelfish breeding and raising and such. Alright, I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.